Hi everyone, and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, I hope during your subscription today. Let's build a self-watering planter box at your perfect height for pain-free gardening. Do you love gardening but are tired of bending over and hurting your back trying to work in your garden? If so, I'm going to show you today how we built the perfect height planter, so I don't have to bend at all in order to do all of my gardening needs, and it's self-watering. And bonus, you don't have to spend a ton of money filling it with soil. We're going to show you how to build up the base, so you just need the minimal amount of soil for your garden. So let's get to it, and I'll show you exactly how we built it. There's lots of different options you can use in order to build a planter. We chose to use cedar rather than pressure-treated wood for this part because we just like the look of it and we know that it is so good for weathering and it lasts a really long time. We also wanted it to be high enough off the ground. So we chose some 8-foot by 8-inch by 1-inch thick boards and we stacked 4 of them to make it a pretty good height. For the base, we wanted to allow air to flow through. So we put some 24 by 24 inch cement blocks and spaced them out. And you could see there's space between them. So we only used 3 24 by 24 inch blocks for our 8-foot long bed. Or you can adjust this in order to make yours the perfect height for you. I'm about 5'9", and this is just the perfect height for me. It comes up to about my hip level. And then as you can see here, we just screwed in some pressure-treated 2x4s into the corners in order to attach them to one another. We decided to use heavy-duty nuts and bolts in order to secure them because we think it actually looks kind of nice on the outside and it gives it a ton of security. There's going to be a lot of water and soil, lots of weight in there, so we wanted to make sure that it's nice and strong. Our planter design is composed of 3 different layers. The base, which we're going to show you how to build next. On top of that sits a water reservoir, including a wicking medium, which allows our planter to be completely self-watering. And finally, the top layer is the garden soil, where we're going to plant all our beautiful plants. Once the box was built, we went inside and took some pressure-treated 2x4s. You can see here that we stacked them in a lattice format on the short end to get the most height that we could. Now that you've got your lattice organized, you'll need to secure it. So we just used some long decking screws and secured them in on a 45-degree angle to keep those stuck together. Top of that lattice of 2x4s, we chose to use cedar decking boards to seal it off. As you can see here, it created a nice solid base for everything else to sit on. There's going to be quite a lot of weight from our water reservoir. In order to calculate where you need to build your box up to, you'll need to think about the depth of the soil needed for what you're planting. We recommend putting at least 12 inches of soil, and you want to have about 1 inch on top so that you can overfill with dirt and allow it to settle about 1 inch. And then our weeping towel was about 4 inches thick. So we left 5 inches height for our reservoir, 12 inches of dirt, making 17 inches plus that inch on the top, 18 inches required. So we built up the base up to that 18-inch point, allowing that 18 inches from the top. So that's how you can figure out exactly how much to build up that base. Because our planter box is quite large, we wanted to make sure that the pressure from the water and all of the dirt wasn't going to push the box out and warp our cedar boards. So we decided to drill through the cedar straight through and use some rebar, which we cut to the right length and secured with bolts. Once the reservoir is full with water, it prevents the box from expanding. So we decided to put 2 in the center of our box and 1 on either end. Once you've tested that these top rebars fit perfectly, remove them and wait until after we've secured the pond liner to insert them again. We came up with this idea after we had already put some strapping on the outside of one side. That's also an option. If there's any sharp corners from the wood or from your rebar, cover that. On the middle board, we put these 2 pieces of extra wood that we had laying around. On the other side, we decided to use old socks. This way, the pond liner cannot rub against it and end up giving us a failure point. Next, we need to form the plastic liner. We highly recommend using a 45 ml pond liner. These are fantastic. They're durable. We're going to last a really long time. We bought this from a local landscaping supply store. I'll put the link in the description below. Then we lined the entire box with it. You may not be able to get the exact measurements, but as long as you staple them in, like we're doing here, so that no water can get in and your pond liner goes up as high as your water, then no water will be able to leak out of it. Once our pond liner was secured inside, then we used the weeping tile. It's a perforated tube that's covered, you can see here, in this landscaping fabric to prevent the dirt from going through it. This is going to hold the water in our reservoir, and it kind of creates space there for water to go into. We used a 4-inch by 52 feet long perforated pipe with a sock that we got at Home Depot. We borrowed this idea from Albo Pepper. Thank you so much for that fantastic idea. Then we simply snaked this back and forth and made it nice and tight, and it fit perfectly within our 8-foot box. Since this was going to be where our water would be sitting, we wanted to make sure soil wouldn't be able to get into there after a few years. So we pulled the fabric over the end, secured it with a twist tie, and then added a sock and another twist tie. Those old socks really did come in handy for this project. So now we've got this reservoir created. How are we going to add the water to it? So what we needed to do was create an entry point for us to fill up the water if it hasn't rained. We used a piece of 2.5-inch ABS pipe. Then we just cut a hole into the weeping tile with a utility knife and simply slid the tube in. To ensure no soil goes into the reservoir, we pulled the fabric up and used a zip tie to make it nice and tight. Now nothing's getting in there. Then, to keep the tube nice and straight, we put a piece of scrap wood in behind and simply secured our tube with some decking screws. This keeps the tube vertical, secure, and when you pull the lid off, you won't end up pulling your tube directly out of the reservoir. Next, we needed to put in a medium that would help to wick the water from our reservoir up to our soil. So there's many different things you can use for this. We decided to use a mixture of what we have available in our area. So we used a mixture of peat moss and perlite. Perlite is simply a volcanic crystal that's a totally natural substance that creates air pockets and really helps that water to wick up through the peat moss. So far, so good. It's working excellently. If you can get your hands on other materials that are really good for wicking, you can also make a mixture. We found this simple mixture has worked really well. We mixed the peat moss and perlite together in our wheelbarrow and then just dumped it on in. You can see the perlite are the little white things within the mixture. Then we just used our hands to push that mixture down in between all of those tubes that we have installed. You don't have to worry about getting it perfect, and it can be sitting on top. It will eventually sink down and sit within every little crevice once it gets wet. Once we put in the wicking material, then we're ready to put in the rebar on the top and make sure to secure it through the pond liner. So we really gently drilled through, and we're careful for the fingers. As you can see here, my father-in-law was very, very careful to poke it through and make only the minimal hole needed so that it couldn't become a failure point. However, we placed this rebar above the level of the reservoir, so there won't be any water sitting in there to create a weak point in our system. As you can see, the rebar is sitting at a level that is above the level of the wicking medium and therefore the reservoir. So this will not create a weak point, so we can secure our rebar and be rest assured. Lastly, we need to create an overflow point. If it rains a lot or when you're filling your reservoir, you need to know when is your reservoir full. So we used a really simple plumbing piece that we found at our local hardware store, the brass piece that has nuts on either side that can be tightened. We drilled a hole from the outside in, again, making sure to really carefully use a utility knife to cut out that hole on the inside. Then just sliding it in and tightening it on either side. Once the overflow tube was secured, we wanted to make sure that there was no chance of dirt clogging it. So once again, we used an old sock and just covered it up and secured it with that zip tie. The last thing to do is to now fill that last 12 inches with soil. We filled our planter box with a lovely garden soil mix that we got from a local Calgary landscape supply, and it has been great so far. Because we only had to fill the planter box with a 12 inches deep of soil, it saved a ton of money. So I just love the idea of building up that base and creating a perfect height so you can save the most money on fill. The last thing we needed to do to finish off our box and make it look beautiful was to put all the edging on. Right on the edges of the box, you can see here, we finished them off just using some of that cedar board. This one was a 1 by 4 by 8 foot board that we cut to fit. And we just put them over top of the corners to make it look pretty. And then we use the same boards to create our edging. We ripped them in half to save on cost. And then we just used some screws and screwed them in. And it has a nice, beautiful finish. Once you've got your garden all filled up with soil and ready to go, remove the lid off of your fill pipe, aim your hose into the pipe, and let it fill up. It'll take about 4 to 6 minutes to fill a reservoir the size of ours the very first time, but once it's full, you'll see it gently overflow your overflow valve. The next time you go to fill your reservoir, it won't take very long at all. It's quite amazing how well this reservoir holds water and rain. Once your drain has stopped draining water, just simply replace the lid and you're ready to go. I've only had to fill my reservoir once so far. I've tried topping it up, but each time it's almost already full. It's quite amazing. And now I have a perfect height planter box that I've now planted all of my seeds and my greens and everything I need for the summer in so that I don't have to bend down. It's the perfect planter box if you have a small backyard like us and you still want to keep gardening. This type of planter box works the best with plants that already have a bit of a root established. If you're planting seeds like we did here, or some little seedling, I did that also. You just need to make sure to water it from the top until its root system is established. But otherwise, you can see ours are doing very, very well. And just 2 short weeks later, you can see all of our seedlings are coming up and we've been eating fresh greens every single day. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. I hope you'll give building your own raised, self-watering garden a try. And if you do, please join us for the next video where I'm going to show you how we built this PVC top for our garden and how to make that into a greenhouse for the spring and the fall, or to use it simply to cover your garden to protect it from hailstorms. Literally the day after I built this, we had a massive hailstorm in Calgary, and I was so grateful that I went ahead and building this top. I was able to use my frost protecting blanket, wrap it around and secure it and protect my garden from the hail. It would have absolutely destroyed my beautiful garden. So join us next time. I'm going to show you exactly how to bend the PVC and join them and easily create a beautiful cover for your garden. If you live in a really cold area like we do in Calgary, Alberta, you could consider putting in a drain to drain out your reservoir for the winter. However, our experience and some research show that it's not really totally necessary, as we're going to make sure to not fill the reservoir in the days to come to the winter. And we feel like there's still a little bit of wiggle room. There's still quite a bit of space in around our planter. So we weren't too worried, and we didn't want to create a failure point, as the water could definitely begin to leak out at that point later on in time. So that's totally up to you. Happy gardening, everyone. I hope your yield is plentiful. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope to see you next time. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to our channel, liking and commenting. That really helps our channel to grow.